Adventure Time was one of my absolute favourite TV shows when I was younger. Actually, scratch that, it went beyond TV. It was one of my favourite pieces of media more widely. I even had one of those little backpacks with the pull-out fin hood. So when I fell ill with the disease a few days ago, as my productivity fell, and as I started feeling less than amazing, I thought, hey, it might be fun to revisit this show. The early days, the days I remember best. Because there was an episode back in season 1 called Rainy Day Daydream, which saw our heroes Finn and Jake stuck inside against their will, having to entertain themselves while they wait. Now, the reason they're stuck doing nothing is a bit more exciting than my reason. There's a storm of raining knives, rather than just feeling bad from illness, but I thought it would be cool to rewatch it anyway, given that I'm in a kind of similar situation myself. And I thought it would be even cooler to try and break it down on this channel afterwards. Give it the old pillar of garbage once over. But this isn't going to be some big, long, pseudo-intellectual video essay like I sometimes make. I don't really feel up to anything that daunting just yet. So instead, why don't you grab a cup of tea, or like lemsip I guess, and join me for a chilled out, no pressure analysis of what I really like about Rainy Day Daydream. Because I think this episode is secretly an argument for why cartoons like Adventure Time matter to the world. In this episode, Finn and Jake are stuck inside. For Finn, this is a big L, because he wants to be in the great outdoors, doing quests and other fun stuff. He's even made a to-do list.
Number 1, backflip off this bridge and do the splits. Number 2, track down and slay a goblin horde.
Jake's not so bothered though, because he thinks they can have a great day by just hanging out and using their imaginations, an idea Finn is not on board with, for a major and eloquently described reason.
Imagination is for turbo nerds who can't handle how kick-butt reality is.
The main conflict of this episode arrives just after this disagreement, because in an effort to demonstrate the appeal of imagination to Finn, Jake starts imagining things, but these things become real. They're all invisible, but now everything Jake imagines becomes physically present in the tree fort, and physically dangerous to our characters, starting off with a floor made of lava and only getting more perilous thereafter. To try and escape from this situation, Jake imagines an imagination off switch, but to get to it, the team have to run a deadly imagined gauntlet, with a whole bunch of dangers standing in between them and their solution. And it's these conjured imagination constructs I'm interested in here, because these creatures and the scenarios they present are really silly. Invisible snakes, a family of invisible trolls, something Jake describes as a big bowl of baby elephants, chainsaws, and doo-doo. And maybe best of all, the bazooka goblin.
The bazooka goblin has you in its sights!
Hey, don't shoot us with that bazooka! Don't you do it!
Early Adventure Time has a reputation for being silly. It's a zany show, set in a very zany world. And while years later Adventure Time develops into a surprisingly mature show in terms of tone, themes, and emotion, its early years are renowned for being random and nonsensical. But in terms of the characters we meet and the places we go, even Season 1 Adventure Time isn't Bazooka Goblin silly. No, these creatures and features produced by Jake's imagination are clearly super wacky and zany, even for this world. In a sense then, the products of Jake's imagination we see in this episode can be understood as parallels for the show itself. Both early Adventure Time and Jake's realized imagination stand out from their respective worlds by virtue of their immense silliness. Adventure Time's pastel-coloured madcap insanity made a real splash back in 2010, bearing the torch for a whole new wave of adorable, so random cartoons. And I think that on some level, Rainy Day Daydreams is commenting on Adventure Time itself and this wacky reputation through the way it creates a little mini world of new extra crazy imagined characters within the world of the show. In such a reading, Jake becomes a stand-in for Pendleton Ward, Adventure Time's creator. He becomes a figure of wild imagination, who instinctively creates not only characters and scenarios, but narratives. Jake can't simply imagine his imagination off. He has to create a machine, guarded by traps and enemies to be struggled against, and ultimately triumphed over. All the basic ingredients for a story. This is not a detailed metaphor by any means. It would struggle to be in this 10-minute runtime, but I do think the episode is interested in this realized imagination idea in a metatextual way. If this is the case, what is Adventure Time saying about itself here, and about similar projects, which embrace imagination and fun with similar gusto? Well, the episode ends with the status quo resumed. The knife storm is past, imagination has stopped bleeding over into reality, and Finn and Jake are back to normal. Well, almost back to normal, because there is one change. Finn's reversed his earlier opposition to imagination. The resolution here is that both characters now accept that the way they passed their time while being stuck inside, or at least the way they set out to pass their time before things started getting life-threatening, was a valid way to spend an afternoon. It was worthwhile. That sense of imagination's affirmation seems the obvious idea to end on here. Reality isn't always perfect, sometimes knives fall from the sky, sometimes bad things happen, and escaping into unreal worlds is a valid response. That's a conclusion we could draw, but honestly, I don't think it's the right one. Instead, I'd like to suggest an alternative. I think Rainy Day Daydream introduces the dichotomy of reality and imagination, and then collapses it intentionally. Much of this episode takes place in the situation we discussed earlier, where whatever Jake imagines is physically real. But what's causing this is never explicitly explained. We even see later in the episode that Finn is able to similarly manifest reality-altering imagination powers. The precise nature of these imagination constructs is never fully revealed, but in some ways they are unequivocally real. They touch our heroes, they hurt them, and at the end of the episode, Finn's imagination device saves Jake. By the end, the idea that imagination is somehow separate from reality, at least in the world of Rainy Day Daydream, is rejected. Imagination as envisaged by this episode isn't pure escapism. It's linked firmly to reality. It impacts the real, and as we see in Finn's new outlook towards the episode's end, it changes the real. So if we return to the idea of Rainy Day Daydream's wild imagination as Adventure Time itself, as silly storytelling, as cartoons more widely, then what is the message? What conclusion should we draw? I think it's about rejecting the idea that shows like early Adventure Time are only valuable as escapism. The idea that imaginative fiction's worth is somehow separate from a real world. Sure, perhaps using cartoons to distract yourself from the downsides of life is a valid way to engage with them, but it is not the only valid way. Because in Rainy Day Daydream, we see an imagined world touch Finn and Jake, hurt them, and then eventually heal them. Shows like this touch us, affect us, inform us. They can even hurt or heal us. Imagination can touch the real in our world too. It just makes that contact through us, through the viewer. I think that's the point this episode was trying to make, or one of them at least. That despite its silly reputation, Adventure Time was a worthwhile show, even back in season 1. Animation and imagination are both worthwhile, beyond their capacity for distraction or escapism. They can affect our lives, our world, even if they're doing so indirectly. I think that's where we should stop, and that's the conclusion we should draw. And I'd love to know what you think about where we ended up down below. Personally, I'm pleased with how this turned out. And honestly, I think I've kind of proven the truth of my argument to myself, because rewatching this episode and thinking about what it's saying, that has impacted reality. It's made me feel slightly better, so that's neat. And I think that's the video, so big thanks to all my patrons on screen now, especially Kevin Douglas and Ian Fifield.